September 9th, 11:30. David Chen hadn't opened this box in 14 years. Inside, a passport. His cousin's passport. Dead for 15 years. The man whose name he'd been living under ever since. David climbed up from the basement with the passport hidden in his jacket's inside pocket. He could feel it there, burning against his chest like a brand of shame. The restaurant was full, lunch rush. Regular customers, families, dock workers. Everyone greeting David with smiles, trust, respect. He smiled back. Served tea. Made light jokes. But inside he was falling apart. In the kitchen, his wife Linda was preparing dim sum. They'd married in 1976. 3 years after David arrived in Harborview. She'd never suspected, never questioned, never doubted that the man she married was really David Chen from Hong Kong. "David, table 5 needs more tea," Linda called out. He grabbed the teapot, walked through the kitchen, and stopped when he saw his 2 children at the back table doing homework. Michael, 10 years old, Jenny, 8 years old, born and raised as Americans. Children who laughed, dreamed, didn't carry the weight of impossible secrets. Children who didn't know their father's name was a lie. David served the tea at table 5, but his hands shook so badly he spilled some on the saucer. "Sorry," he muttered. "It's okay, David, you look tired. Didn't sleep well." It wasn't a lie. He hadn't slept since he saw the body, since he knew Bobby Sullivan was dead, since he realized the only person who knew his secret could no longer tell it, but also could no longer protect him. At 1 p.m., when the lunch rush ended, David locked himself in the small office in the back. He took the passport from his pocket and opened it again. David Chen, born 1947, deceased 1972, Wei Zhang's cousin, the only relative Wei had in the United States. Dead in a construction accident in Boston the year before Wei arrived, and Wei, young, desperate, illegal, had seen an opportunity. A terrible, necessary opportunity. David, Wei's opened the locked desk drawer. Inside was an envelope. Not as old as Sarah's, but equally dangerous. Inside, a handwritten document. His confession, written in 1973, right after he assumed David's identity. A confession he'd never had the courage to send. "My name is Wei Zhang. I entered the United States illegally in July 1973. I assumed the identity of my deceased cousin, David Chen. And on the night of August 23rd, 1972, I was working at St. Michael's Orphanage when the fire started. And I saw..." He stopped reading. Couldn't continue, because what he saw that night still haunted him. And if anyone discovered he was there, that he witnessed something crucial and fled without telling anyone, it would be the end of everything. "15 years earlier, back in Hong Kong, trying to disappear from his own past, Wei Zhang received a letter. Wei was 26 years old and lived in a one-room apartment in Kowloon with 6 other men. All factory workers, all poor, all dreaming of a better life. Wei worked 16 hours a day in a textile factory. He earned enough to eat and pay rent. Nothing more. No future, no hope. And haunted by the memories of that night in Boston, until the letter arrived. "David Chen deceased in construction accident," the letter said. Sent by his cousin's employer in the United States. "We regret to inform the family," Wei held the letter. "Cousin David, the only relative who'd made it out of Hong Kong, the only one who'd succeeded in America, dead at 25, barely older than Wei, and along with the letter, there was a death certificate, documentation, and the address where David had lived in Boston. Wei looked at those documents for 3 days, and then made a decision that would change his life and destroy his conscience. Wei sold everything he had, paid a smuggler. In July 1973, he boarded a cargo ship with false documents. 3 weeks later, he disembarked in San Francisco, not as Wei Zhang, as David Chen, using his dead cousin's passport that he'd obtained through the smuggler, assuming an identity that no one on American soil would question. David Chen from Hong Kong, worker, legal immigrant, deceased cousin that no one would know was dead unless someone checked, and no one would check. But Wei's story, the story connecting him to Bobby Sullivan, began a year before he assumed David's identity in August 1972. Wei was in Boston illegally, having snuck in on another ship months earlier. No documents, no legal status, working wherever he could, always under the table, always afraid of being caught. And that August he got work as a night janitor. St. Michael's Orphanage. Cash payment, no questions asked. Perfect for someone invisible. We worked from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. He cleaned hallways, bathrooms, kitchen. The work was solitary, perfect for someone who needed not to be noticed. But there was another night employee, the maintenance man, Bobby Sullivan. Bobby noticed everyone, and he noticed Wei. "You're new," Bobby said that first night in English. "What's your name?" "Wei," he answered, then realized his mistake. Should have lied. Given a false name, but Bobby just smiled. "Welcome, Wei. If you need anything, let me know." For 3 weeks, Wei and Bobby worked together in the silent early morning hours of St. Michael's. They didn't talk much. The language barrier was significant, but there was a mutual respect. Bobby never asked about Wei's legal status. Wei never asked why Bobby, clearly educated and intelligent, worked as a janitor. Some secrets don't need to be spoken to be understood. But in the 3rd week of August, Wei noticed something. Bobby was worried, nervous. He spent hours examining the electrical wiring in the basement, taking notes, taking pictures with a Polaroid camera. "Problem?" Wei asked one night, pointing at the exposed wiring. Bobby looked at him, then nodded. "Danger. Big danger." He pointed at the ceiling. "Children sleep up there. If fire..." He made an explosion gesture. Wei understood and was afraid. "You tell boss." "I told him." "He doesn't care." Bobby looked defeated. Money more important than children. Wei saw the anger and frustration in Bobby's eyes, and saw something else, determination. Bobby was going to do something about it. Going to report it. Going to force action. 2 days later, the orphanage caught fire. Wei was in the basement when the fire started. He was mopping the concrete floor when he heard the crack, then saw the sparks. An overloaded outlet had exploded, throwing fire onto cardboard boxes stacked against the wall. Wei ran to put it out, but the fire spread too fast. It climbed up the boxes, reached the wooden ceiling. In seconds, it was out of control. He ran up the stairs shouting, "Fire! Fire!" But he was alone on the ground floor. Bobby was on the 2nd floor making his nightly rounds. The nuns slept on the 3rd, the children on the 2nd, and the fire was blocking the main staircase. We tried to go up the main staircase, but flames were already consuming the wooden steps. He tried the service stairs, also blocked. He was trapped on the ground floor while the fire climbed, and he could hear the screams starting above. Children waking, nuns shouting to evacuate, chaos. Wei ran to the side door. Had to get out, had to call the fire department. But when he reached the door, he saw something that made him stop. A man was leaving through the same door, carrying a leather briefcase, moving quickly but not panicked, as if he knew exactly what he was doing. In the firelight, Wei saw his face, recognized him, Jonathan Reeves, the director's son. Wei and Jonathan looked at each other for 1 second. Jonathan saw Wei, Wei saw Jonathan, and Jonathan saw the understanding in Wei's eyes. "You didn't see anything," Jonathan said in English, pointing at Wei. "Understand?" "Nothing." Wei didn't understand all the words, but he understood the tone. The threat Jonathan left through the door. Wei stood frozen. Then thought about the children on the 2nd floor. Thought about Bobby. Thought about doing the right thing, but then thought about himself, about his illegal status, about how if police questioned him, they'd discover he had no documents, that he'd be deported. And Wei Zhang made the most cowardly and most human choice of his life. He ran. We ran through the side door. Didn't call the fire department. Someone else would do that. Didn't stay to witness. Couldn't risk it. He ran through Boston's streets that August dawn. Ran until he couldn't hear the sirens anymore. Until he was far enough away to pretend he'd never been there. Without documents and terrified, Wei managed to board a cargo ship as a stowaway weeks later. By the end of 1972, he was back in Hong Kong trying to disappear from his own past. The next day in the newspapers, Orphanage fire kills 8 children. Cause electrical failure. No mention of Jonathan Reeves leaving with a briefcase. No mention of possible crime. Just tragedy. Just accident, and Wei kept what he saw. Out of fear. Out of cowardice. Out of survival. Wei looked at his written confession, the part he'd never shown anyone. And I saw Jonathan Reeves leaving through the side door with a leather briefcase. He was calm. He wasn't saving anyone. He was fleeing with something. And when he saw me, he threatened me. I should have stayed. Should have testified. But I ran, and 8 children died. And I never told anyone what I saw, until Bobby found out. If you're enjoying this video, please click the like button so YouTube can share it with more people. And if you enjoy this type of video, please subscribe to our channel. David was closing the restaurant when he saw the man waiting outside. At first glance, he didn't recognize him. But then the man stepped closer under the streetlight. Wei Zhang? David felt his blood freeze. No one had called him by that name in 14 years. You've confused me with someone else, he said in English, starting to lock the door. No, I know who you are. I saw you, St. Michael's, August 1972. David stopped, turned slowly, looked at the man's face, and recognized him. Bobby Sullivan. And yes, I survived the fire. Just like you. We need to talk, Bobby said. But not here, the dock. 10 minutes. David didn't want to go. Wanted to run, hide. But he knew he couldn't. Bobby had found him. After 15 years, the past had caught up. He walked to the dock. Bobby was waiting, leaning against a post, looking out at the ocean. You witnessed something that night, Bobby said bluntly. I know because I saw it too. I saw you running up the stairs from the basement. Saw you trying to put out the fire. And I saw you stop at the side door. Saw you see someone leaving. David said nothing. Jonathan Reeves, Bobby continued. The director's son. He left with a briefcase. He wasn't helping anyone. He was taking something. Documents, probably. Evidence of fraud, embezzlement. Because that fire, it wasn't just negligence, Wei, it was too convenient. David finally spoke. Why are you telling me this now? After 15 years? Because Richard Reeves died 2 months ago. The director, Jonathan's father. He died rich, respected, never paying for what he did. And I can't let that stand. Those children deserve justice. And what do you want from me? Testimony. You saw Jonathan leaving. That corroborates my theory. That the fire was exploited, maybe even caused, to destroy evidence. David shook his head. I can't. If I testify, they'll investigate. They'll discover I was there illegally. They'll discover I'm not David Chen. I'll lose everything. My family, my restaurant, my life. Bobby looked at him with a mixture of understanding and disappointment. I get it. I really do. I ran that night too. Spent 15 years hiding because I was afraid of what Reeves knew about my past. But Wei, when are we going to stop letting fear control us? When are we going to do what's right, no matter the cost? Easy to say when you don't have children. No, it's not easy. But it's necessary. Bobby turned to leave, then stopped. I won't force you, but I'm going to expose the truth, with or without you. And when I do, Jonathan Reeves will know there are still witnesses, and he'll want to silence us. So think about this. Are you safer hiding or helping to put him behind bars? Three days after that conversation, Bobby was dead, and David knew deep in his soul that Jonathan Reeves had killed him. Because Bobby was right. There were witnesses, and Jonathan couldn't allow the truth to come out. But how did Jonathan know about Wei Zhang? How did he discover that David Chen wasn't David Chen? The answer came when David remembered. Jonathan kept everything, files, records, including a 1972 night shift schedule with a single name scribbled by Sister Margaret, Wei, janitor. And months ago, Jonathan had hired a private investigator in Boston. The detective had cross-referenced David Chen's death, 1972, with current business registrations and traced David to Harborview. Jonathan knew, for months, and was waiting for the right moment to act. Now David had to decide, keep hiding, and hope Jonathan wouldn't come after him too. or testify and risk losing everything he'd built? He looked through the office window. Linda in the kitchen. Michael and Jenny doing homework. His family, his life, all built on a lie, but still real. Still loved. The phone rang. David answered. David Chen, a voice he didn't recognize. Yes, this is Jonathan Reeves from Reeves Hardware. I'd like to discuss a possible equipment supply for your restaurant. Could we meet? Perhaps. At the dock? Tonight? David felt his blood run cold. Jonathan knew David had talked to Bobby, knew David was a witness, and now Jonathan was doing what he'd done to Bobby, eliminating loose ends. I need to check my schedule, David stammered. Of course, but don't take too long, David. Or should I say, Wei? The line went dead. David hung up the phone with trembling hands. Jonathan knew everything, and was giving him a choice. Meet at the dock and probably die, or stay silent and maybe live. But David realized something. Jonathan had made a mistake. He'd revealed he knew about Wei Zhang, which meant Jonathan was monitoring Bobby, knew about his conversations, and had probably killed him for it. David had to do something he'd never done in 15 years, something that went against every survival instinct he had. He had to go to the police. 5 p.m. David walked into Sheriff Tom Bradley's office. Sheriff, I need to make a confession. Tom looked up. About what, David? About who I really am, and about what I saw on the night of August 23rd, 1972. Tom stood slowly. Sit down. And David Wei told him everything. His false identity, his illegal work at the orphanage, what he saw the night of the fire, the conversation with Bobby 3 days ago, and the threatening call he'd just received from Jonathan Reeves. When he finished, Tom was pale. Jonathan Reeves, the owner of Reeves Hardware and Electrical. Yes, the director's son. Bobby believed the fire was used to destroy evidence of fraud. And I saw Jonathan leaving with a briefcase, fleeing, not saving anyone. Tom grabbed a pen. Reeves Hardware also provides electrical maintenance in the region, including to your restaurant? David hesitated. Yes, Jonathan offered a contract last year. I refused. I said I had another supplier, and now he's calling offering equipment. Tom nodded grimly. He's testing, seeing if you'll meet with him. If he calls again, answer from my office. We'll record the call. Tom picked up the phone. I need backup, and I need a warrant now. He looked at David. You're going to have to repeat all of this officially, and you'll probably face consequences for the false identity. This could involve INS and immigration proceedings. I'll be straight with you, but we now have a homicide, and you just gave me the first real suspect in Bobby Sullivan's murder. And maybe finally justice for 8 dead children. Tom wrote something down. If Jonathan calls again, I want you with a recorder. Write down the time and duration of any contact, and don't go anywhere alone until we arrest him. David nodded. He knew his life as David Chen was over, that everything he'd built was about to collapse. But for the first time in 15 years, he wasn't running. He was staying, and he was doing the right thing. In the next video, we'll discover Father Patrick Doyle's story, the priest everyone trusts, the man of God who knows all the town's secrets. But Father Patrick is carrying the biggest secret of all, because he wasn't just Harborview's priest. 15 years ago, he was the assistant priest at St. Michael's, and he knew about the dangerous wiring, and he did nothing. And now Bobby Sullivan is dead, because Patrick never found the courage to confess his own sin. Some stories are about hiding who you are. This one is about discovering you can't escape what you've done. If you liked this video, subscribe to the channel and share our video to help us spread our stories.